Hello, welcome to Why Not Both. My name is Pam Schaefer, and I'm a musician and therapist in Los Angeles. Why Not Both is all about how our multiple passions inform our identity, and this season we are brought to you by Under the Radar magazine and produced by Laura Studeris. If you like what you hear, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform and come spend time with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, and that is both on Instagram and on Twitter. For this episode, we got to virtually hang out with Los Angeles legend Alice Bagg and chat with her all about her new album, Sister Dynamite, as well as a bunch of other stuff. She's super rad, and I hope that you enjoy our interview. I'm chilling in my reading chair. I just set all my stuff up over here. I'm like, this is fine.
That's good. I tend to get a little claustrophobic in my workspace if I put too much stuff in it.
I'm the same way. And I tend to, I don't know if you do this, I rearrange my workspace like every few months, just to shake things up.
Yeah. There's not a lot of places where things can go, but I try and by rearrange, I just mean I clean up. And try and find things that I've lost over the last month.
That's so funny. I'm like, welcome to Why Not Both? We're all secretly Marie Kondo now.
It's kind of fun. Then you forget you have stuff. Like, oh, look what I discovered. I liked this once. I still like it.
Yes. Yes. I've been discovering that even within my music space. Like, what? You don't have a toy piano and a melodica in your house? Obviously.
What? At least you know what your instruments are. Sometimes I just buy stuff at yard sales and I'm like, what is that called? I think I do. I think I have a harmonium. Oh, no, maybe it's not. It's it doesn't have the little flap in the back, the pump organ thing. I'm not sure, but it's a little box and it has the buttons for the different chords. I don't know. I guess maybe it's a chord organ.
Oh my God. I was like, that sounds kind of like if you took an auto harp and a harmonium and somehow smush them into the same instrument.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's a little, it looks like a toy. It sounds like a toy, but it's pleasing.
Oh my God, that's so cool. I'm like, I want to play with it. Oh, that's amazing. It's so funny. I usually ask guests at the top of the interview, what do you do? And now I'm like, so what weird items have you found in your home during this quarantine?
I have a toy xylophone. I actually had to get a better xylophone because my toy xylophone didn't have sharps or flats.
Oh, no.
Now I have one that has sharps and flats, and that's very exciting to me. So,
ooh, I have the little angel tone glockenspiel. It comes in a little plastic case, and I have had that thing for 10 years, and it's bizarrely served me so well.
I don't know what brand it is. It comes in a little case. It's a little blue case. Is that the one you have? Yeah. It's featured on my record.
Oh my God. That's amazing. I love that. It's funny because I was watching The Decline of Western Civilization last night to watch some footage of you. And I'm like, one, you're a total badass. But now I'm like, you're a badass with a glockenspiel.
Thank you.
This makes me so happy.
Oh my God. It's just such a weird thing, imagining if somebody had told you, you're going to be in a punk band and then you're going to do a little punk solo on glockenspiel. You believe it, right?
I love that. That is, you have no idea. I was like, that makes my day. Because I think that people underestimate instruments sometimes, especially the eccentric tiny instruments. And then all of a sudden you're like, watch this.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoy listening to some oddball thing thrown in, somebody using a kazoo or whistling or playing a cheese grater or something. On my first record, one of the drummers that I used 3 different drummers, but one of the drummers was Joe Berardi, who is an incredibly versatile drummer. And I asked him, I said, let's put something different in there. Like, let's bang on on some different things. And he's like, I've got some old license plates in my car.
What?
And he brought the old license plates in, and he started just, and they had, somehow they had different tones.
Oh my God.
It was amazing. I actually took a little like video clip of him as he was, playing the license plates. I don't know. Even describing it sounds ridiculous, but they sounded great.
That sounds like the most punk rock thing, just to be like, oh yeah, of course I have a pile of license plates in the trunk of my car.
Why? I never thought to ask him that. Why, Joe? Are you like committing crimes and having to change your license plate?
Yeah, I was like, were they all from the same state? Were they from different states?
No, they weren't. They were from different states.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's actually, I'm like, I have so many questions.
Me too. Me too. I'm going to have to reach out and find out.
Be like, what happened there? Because, yeah, like, I remember seeing those bags around LA that people used to make out of like expired license plates or like licenses that were no longer in use, I guess. Like people used to make like handbags out of them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I have a vague recollection of that now that you mention it. Yeah.
And I was like, maybe
he was making handbags.
Yeah, I love that. No. I'm spinning this story in my head that I'm like, why would someone have license plates? Like, oh, maybe they're making handbags. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm just like, well, maybe I'll have to interview him about maybe his secret handbag business.
Yeah. I wonder if he's sitting at home right now. That's a little side job during the isolation.
Exactly. Everyone else is baking bread, but no.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Baking bread. I am like baking nonstop.
Oh my God.
Make me
so
stop. Well, it's been cloudy. I mean, it's sunny today, but for the past couple of weeks, it was cloudy and rainy, and it just felt like we're all at home. We have to sit here and just hang out. Let's bake some bread. Let's make some tortillas. Let's get some cookies going. How about some bread pudding?
That is so funny. I think I drank more cups of tea during that because I kept being like, oh, I'll just put the kettle on and have another cup of tea. That's so comforting. And after a while, I was just like, I think I'm half woman, half tea now.
Yeah, we can overdo it. I know, and also I was like trying to. I think when this first started, when my husband first like came home furloughed from work, like he's like, let's have a drink, and I'm like, yeah, let's. We don't have to work, and then I realized, like, oh, maybe that's not the best thing to be doing. So getting drunk during this isolation. I'm not judging anybody. If you're getting drunk, enjoy. But I'm just thinking, like, I am at risk. I should probably be trying, eating salads and working out and trying to stay strong.
There you go.
I know that's what I should be doing. Like yesterday, my husband Greg was totally tempting me. He's like, I have all the stuff for a martini. And I'm like, yeah, I want.
Well, and also we've all lost track of our sense of time whatsoever. And so it's so funny because most people would be like, oh, maybe I'll have a drink after I'm done with work or, at the end of the day. And now it's like, what are days?
Yeah, what day is it?
Yeah. How did any of this work? And that's, wow. I'm thinking about, when you said like, oh, when he was first furloughed, and I was just like, that must have been a huge change of pace for everybody. Like watching what's changing in LA right now is fascinatingly strange. Like I always thought like, oh, I like reading history. I studied classics. And now I'm like, excuse me, I did not sign up to live through history.
Yeah.
This was I like reading about this abstractly. Living through it, another story entirely.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it sounds like, I was going to say, well, we could, stay home and read about it. But then it's like every now and then you need to like go to the market or go to the hardware store because something broke. And then it's like, even like the most basic trip out of the house kind of freaks me out for 2 weeks. Like, okay,
yes.
Now like now we're starting day one again because somebody in the house had to go to the market. So
Right.
we have 14 days to count, and hopefully within that time, somebody else won't have to go to somewhere. I don't know. It's just, it's crazy.
Yes, and it's so strange. I went for a walk with one of my like quarantine mates, and we're like, imagine the scene. We're walking down Sunset Boulevard in the middle of Silver Lake. The street is completely deserted. It's evening, not like middle of the night, but definitely it has gotten dark outside. And she and I are walking together, and someone actually whistles at us from
Oh my
across
God.
the street. The one other person on the street.
Oh God.
And she and I were both just like, normally we'd be mad, like, but this is actually funny that we're like, and also we were wearing like, I think I was wearing like pajama pants under a dress with a hoodie and a mask. I'm like and we just started laughing. We're like, are they just trying to make this like normal?
God.
Yeah. Like, what? Usually I'm like, where are you going with that if you whistle at someone? But under this circumstance, I was like, I really am wondering what you're trying to get out of this.
Oh,
It was
relentless.
It was a time. It was a time. I was curious because you had said like, oh, you're finding all this new stuff, and when you were talking about that instrument and then talking about the license plate solo, I was wondering, where did you record the new album?
We recorded in Echo Park at Station House Studio.
Ooh.
With Mark Rains, who is a really great engineer. He knows his equipment really well. He knows, like, he communicates with me and my producer really well. Like, we can, I don't know, sometimes when you're working with someone and you're asking them for a certain tone,
Mm-hmm.
it's not as easy as like saying like, turn that button there. It's like,
right.
they have to know their equipment. And Mark is great about that. He really, like, we can describe a sound or play him a sample of something and say, we want it to have this tone. And he can make it happen. And
awesome.
I'm so grateful for him.
That is so cool. I love when you can bring in references and a producer is like, oh, like this. And you're like, exactly like that.
Yeah. And my producer, Lisa Flores, is just such a clear communicator too. She has, she's just very detail oriented. She can hear every little thing that I don't hear, like she'll just say like, where I think like the bass is not cutting through. Instead of saying like, bring up the bass, she's like, oh, bring up this part of the midsection on this instrument and turn down the, she knows how to tweak it. Like, and I don't know. For me, I paint with much broader strokes. So it really helps to have, people on the team that know how to, interpret the things that I say and that the producer says. So right. And especially like, I mean, watching the footage last night and then hearing you speak now, like it sounds like there's been a really interesting evolution from like, I'm like, how do I even frame this question? Like watching that and then hearing you now talk about like mixing the midsections of bass and things like that. I'm just like, wow, what happened in all of those intervening years? That's fascinating. I was like, what was that process like to go from being more of like a performing band to like what you do now? And are you still performing? And like, I guess we would be live streaming now because we can't go anywhere. Like, yeah.
What's that like?
Well, well, first of all, let me start off by saying I canceled a whole bunch of gigs that I had planned through spring and summer. But I'm okay with that, actually. I do feel like I'm very fortunate in that I had the opportunity to make some videos ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So I feel like my music, like we pushed back the album release a little bit, but I feel like the music will still be, the album will still be coming out. Right. But a lot has happened since the Bags days. When I first got in a band, I didn't really know what I was doing. I started writing songs and I felt like, I'm not sure that I'm the best lyricist or, I've always felt like I had like my strength was melody.
Mm-hmm.
So my guitarist Craig Lee would bring in lyrics, and he'd bring in a bunch of sets of lyrics and just say, like, use my lyrics, and you make up the melody, and you put them wherever you want, edit them
Mm-hmm.
however you want. So at a certain point, I actually stopped writing for the Bags. There
Oh.
was probably like a year where I wasn't writing at all. I would just use Craig Lee's lyrics and fit them to the music. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess I was writing the melody,
Yeah, I was
but
gonna say.
yeah, but I wasn't contributing lyrically. And it was strange, because then towards the end of the Bags, I went back to writing again, to contributing lyrics, and I felt a lot more confident. But there was a period in there when I felt like my language skills weren't there.
Got it.
Um, and I think over the years, I've become a stronger lyricist. I've actually like read books on like how to write a lyric. There's craft involved in it, and I try and be respectful of the idea that there's a craft, but also know that it's punk rock, so we can break all the rules.
Right. Isn't that
Yeah.
like, I love learning about, it's weird. I was afraid when I was learning music theory that it would ruin my ability to write music. And it's weird because like I don't actively use like theory and lyrical knowledge when I'm writing, but I find that then I use it when I'm editing or then to like revise my work. It's almost like I'll dump out ideas and then kind of like go in and be like, oh, okay, like what works and what doesn't. And then when I analyze it after, I can usually find reasons why it works and why it doesn't. But it's almost like you have to like learn the rules, then throw away the rules.
Yeah, and then they come up when they're needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I feel like I read the books, and then, like, I'm gonna I and by I'm lying. I didn't read the books. I read like one book on songwriting, and then you know I did it had like little exercises. So I did the little exercises, and then I put it away. And then next time that I was writing a song, something would come up, and I'd say, "Oh yeah, remember to like think
Yes.
of a more interesting way to say that. Don't say it in a cliched way," which was one of the things in the book, right? And it
Yeah.
makes total sense. It's not like it's not anything that we don't already know or that doesn't make sense. So it's
Right. Right. It's just kind of like having like friendly reminders in the back of your mind, just being like, oh yeah, oh, I can do that a different way.
yeah, exactly.
How
So
is
I'm
it?
grateful for them.
That's awesome. And I was wondering, like, how is it different than working on your own solo stuff? Like, do you write on your own? Do you like to write with co-writers?
Well, all my solo albums have been written by myself on my iPad. Pretty
Nice.
much, like I use GarageBand, so I
Awesome.
can multi-track, and all of them have me playing like a really bad guitar. But I mean, but the chords are there, the changes are there, and the
Right.
idea, like
Right.
I remember like writing um, a little guitar hook that I wanted to communicate to my guitarist, and I couldn't play it. So I played like three notes, and then I would get another. I had to track the rest of the line on another track to make it, because I couldn't move my fingers fast enough to complete the.
Yes. Yes.
But then he took it, and not only did he play it, but he added like his magic to it. It's the
Hmm.
way that the musicians play the music, their personal touches that really like. So I feel like there is collaboration in the sense that I'm using people that are super talented to play my music, and so like even if I write a very basic song, they're gonna make it shine.
That's
So
amazing. And that's awesome that you have people that you trust, that you're like, I'm going to present this idea to you and that they can take that idea and like run with it.
yeah, yeah. So I'm super grateful for my band, who has stuck with me, over the past few years, and I think it's frustrating for them at times, because like right now we had like they were planning on going on tour, maybe making a
Yeah.
little bit of money, and now they're stuck. They're
Yeah.
stuck at home. So
Ugh. Yeah, I'm glad that I've been seeing And I should at some point like actually really read. I've been reading like the headlines about like how like Music Cares is helping musicians. Like a lot of people have like put up Patreons, like things like that. But just kind of like what's out there to support musicians that usually are touring musicians that right now are like,
Well, the only problem with that is that, it's the whole country's is in the
yes.
same boat, so as much as you want to support like fellow musicians, it's like you're in the same boat. You're also like trying to figure out like how long will my little bit of savings hold out,
Right.
and will my unemployment actually kick in, or will I, I mean, for me, like I'm self-employed, I guess. So it's like, are they gonna find reasons not to grant me unemployment? I don't know. They let me pay taxes, so I guess they should grant me unemployment.
I was going to say, I feel like a lot of this has spoken to how, I don't know how to put it other than deranged and broken our system is.
Right.
That we're wondering these things of like, because you are self-employed, which means that you have paid taxes, which means that you should be paying into unemployment for yourself. And I'm like, the fact that we're even wondering, like, can you get paid? I'm like, oh, that makes me so angry. I'm like,
I know. Well, we'll figure it out. I mean, I think right now, I think what's important to a lot of people is that, the that there are no rent evictions, that people can pay their mortgage either in payments, or that there's a delay in mortgage payments. And
right.
I mean, I think people just need to be able to know they're not going to be thrown out of their houses, and they're going to be able to take care of their families.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whether they're artists or otherwise. And a lot of artists I know, it's interesting because before all this, I remember talking to a lot of artists on my podcast about the idea of even artists having day jobs, and how like in some ways that's so frowned upon, of like if you have a day job then you're not, quote, a real artist. And that
Right.
I've always thought that that was so silly personally, because I'm like, well, if you make art, you're an artist. Like,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I remember getting into a discussion with somebody, because I was a teacher for a long, long time while simultaneously playing music. And I
mhm,
remember somebody saying, well, I'm a musician. I play music all day. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? You took that gig where you hated the band you were playing with, but you played it anyway because it was paying your rent.
right.
Or you did that, that thing that you didn't really like, but you were playing music because it was paying your rent. So how is that any better? Like, at least I only play music I love. And that's and and if I don't like it, I'm not going to play it for any amount of money. And the other job I had was teaching kids that I also loved. So it's like, you know what? I'm happy with my choice to be a teacher and make music.
That's
So
amazing. I was like, when did you teach kids? Because like I love working with kids. I think that kids are amazing.
I I taught elementary school for like over 20 years here in Los Angeles. And then I moved to Arizona for a little bit,
mhm.
and I taught there for a year. And then I moved to Sedona for a short period of time. And I did not have, that was the only time I think that I didn't have a regular gig. I was just like
Wow.
writing music on my iPad, and I had just written Violence Girl.
Mhm.
So I knew I wanted to do a book tour. So that was like
Mhm.
that was the first time in my life where I just totally thought, okay, I'm going to just be an artist and see where I land.
Right.
And
That's fascinating.
yeah, I don't know how old I was, but I was over 50 by that time. So it was like, you know, I'm on a little campaign to show that like old age can be a really creative time. Like, and by old, I mean like, you know, what I like, as soon as I turned 50, I felt like I turned a corner, and I
Mhm.
felt like I was ready for a new chapter in my life. And it was all about doing all the things that I thought like had to wait. When I was
Wow.
younger, a lot of times, you delay, you think like, well, first I have to have a job, or first I have to, have something.
Right.
Always seems to be something that comes ahead of what you really want to do. And
Yes.
then when I turned that corner at 50, I thought like, okay, I'm writing a book. I'm going to tour with this book. I'm going to, work on music. And all of a sudden, just things fell into place and possibilities seemed endless again.
Oh my God.
So,
You can't see me right now, but I have this like starry look in my eyes. I'm like, oh, you're my hero.
well, I just want people to know, because I think a lot of times, they get the message that old is like, you're going to be like waiting to die. I'm not waiting to die. I'm like, I'm exercising to fight off coronavirus. If it should come knocking at my door, I'm going to try and punch it.
You're
Throw
like
a
doing
stale
every
cookie at
YouTube workout. I've baked so much bread, you have no idea.
it.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that you're talking about that, because even one of the artists that I was talking to, she and I are both in our 30s, and we were saying that it's almost like we had this illusion in our 20s that like somehow either we had to finish everything we wanted to accomplish somehow in our 20s, which makes no sense, or that by the time we got to our 30s, we were somehow like done. And in
Yeah.
fact, like we discovered the opposite. And I feel like every decade I live, I keep like getting more excited about what I get to do in that decade. And I love what you said about like that all of a sudden it's like those obstacles are illusory. Like sometimes when I'm working, I'm like, oh, maybe I should like tidy up before I work, or maybe I should finish my emails before I write, or like things like that. And after a while, I'm like, whatever. Like I'm like, no, I don't care anymore about writing emails. Like I need to just work on a song right now.
Yes, absolutely. I think part of it is just giving yourself permission, right? Like just saying, this is who I am. I'm a musician, so I am going to, cut out a chunk of time in my day and give myself permission to write a song. I did it with my book. I remember and I kind of tricked myself into it when I was writing Violence Girl. I
Mhm.
would put my daughter in the school bus, make myself a cup of coffee, and just start writing. And
Wow.
I would tell myself I had a restriction. I could not eat lunch until I'd finished my post for the day, the
Oh my
writing that I had
God.
to do for that day. Because
Oh my
Violence Girl
God.
was all blog. Yes. So
Yes.
and that worked for me. No housework, no laundry, no nothing
Nothing.
else, just write. And it worked for me.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. I was like, I low key bribe myself with lunch sometimes too.
Exactly. And the hungrier you get, the more like, oh yeah, okay, this is a good idea.
Yes, yes, you're like, just get something out.
Yeah.
That's so funny. What inspired you to start writing Violence Girl, and tell everyone, I guess, like tell all the podcast listeners, like, what is Violence Girl about?
Okay, Violence Girl is I guess it's kind of my autobiography. It's a memoir. It was inspired by meeting with this group of actors who were writing a play called The Barber of East LA.
Hmm.
And they asked to interview me and a couple of my friends about what it was like growing up in East LA during the 60s and 70s. They took us
Mm.
out in exchange for our knowledge, they took us out for drinks. And we got really drunk and, of course, started telling the best stories. We were so drunk that they were all funny. But at that point, one of them turned to me and said, "Why don't you write a book? You really need to write a book." And of
Oh,
course, I was like, "Okay, yeah, maybe."
oh my
I
God,
went
that's great.
home. I told my husband, and he was like, "I always tell you this, and you never listen to me." So the next morning, when I woke up, he had gone to work, and he left our laptop on the kitchen table, and it said, "The True Life Adventures of Violence Girl," and he had set up a blog for me. And
Oh.
the reason it was called True Life Adventures of Violence Girl is because we had just been to Comic-Con, and I had
Mhm.
been talking about what would my comic book be, and I had mentioned that. So I started blogging this book, and
Mhm.
before long, I picked up followers, and they encouraged me and they motivated me to write. And long story short, or maybe long story less long, at the end, at the end of the blogging, I put out a little message that said like, what should I do with this now?
Yeah.
And my followers sent in suggestions as to where I should send it. I sent out 10 pages to Feral House, and they immediately got back to me and said they wanted the book. So that's what Violence Girl is.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so fascinated. What were your interactions like with the people who were reading it as you were blogging it? Like, what were some of those conversations about?
Mostly it was people just encouraging me and saying, like, reacting to what I'd written and saying like, oh, I remember this, or tell
Yeah.
us more about that. So it was a sense of responsibility too, because certain days I didn't feel like writing, and if I didn't write, someone would write in and say, hey, I'm waiting for my installment. I read it before going to work, or I read it at
Oh,
work or whatever. So then I had like, it was almost like having a boss.
that's so funny. Well, yeah, because like,
And
yeah,
yeah, an
sometimes,
editor.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was thinking on the internet, sometimes it's like, it feels like you're like screaming into the void. And having people actually like the void screams back and is like, hey, where's my stuff?
Yeah. So it felt meaningful. It felt like, it was worth doing because people were interacting with it. So and you know what, it really was inspired by what I know, by my experiences in punk, because
Mm-hmm.
I am not a writer. I never studied, I never aspired to being a writer, but I had something to say. I wrote it in the best way that I could, and I blogged it, which is something that's accessible to anybody. And
Right.
punk rock is that same way. It's not about like how well you can play your instrument. It's about having something to say and having the audacity to get up and make some noise and tell your story, or
Yes.
tell. So I felt like it was very punk inspired, like blogging it, publishing every day, not a lot of like, critique, or not a lot of judgment, just do it. And it
Right.
worked.
Right. Oh my God. It's funny because that's interesting what you said about punk, because my memories of punk growing up in LA, my parents worked in downtown and I grew up in the valley. And so we would drive through the city because my Nana was in the Fairfax district. So like I'd be kind of crisscrossing the city, but in the car with my parents. And I remember seeing people outside of shows on the Sunset Strip. And I remember thinking to myself, I said to my parents at one point, like I was seeing all these people and they were so shiny and so alluring. Like they were like, it was like exotic birds. And I remember being like, I was like, that's what I want to be. I was like, I want to be like that. My parents were like, what? And I was just like, I want to be a shiny bird like them.
Yes.
I remember
Yes.
thinking it was so cool. And I remember my like great aunt gave me like some of her costume jewelry. So I would like try and like poof my hair as big as it would get. And I'd wear these like giant clip on earrings and I'd be like, yeah. And, like, I wanted to be like who I saw like from the car windows, because it was just me in the back seat, just like, watching the city go by as a really little kid.
Yeah, those exotic birds are like my favorites too. The people, and they still are, and not all of them are punk. There's different people out there that just like, they're unique and they're so excited. I'm so happy that they're in the world, because they just broaden out, what the scope of humanity and expression. I feel like it widens all of our ability to like express ourselves as creatively as we want to.
Yes.
I when my kid was little, I remember her wanting to go to school with like, um, it was like, I don't know, it's like a little suction cup. It was like a little suction cup that had a piece of wire attached to it and a crystal dangling from it.
Yes. Oh my God, I have
And
this in my room.
do you know what I'm talking? I
I
don't
know
even know
exactly what you're talking about.
but she suctioned it to her forehead and she wanted to wear it to school. And I'm like, yeah, you can wear it to school. That's fine. And I'm
That is
sure, I
so
don't know
funny.
what her teachers said, but I just thought like, You go ahead and wear that to school and see what happens.
That is amazing. I was like, oh my God. I was just like, I relate to this deeply. I remember going to school and my mom would put my hair in 2 ponytails so that my hair wouldn't get tangled, and I'd undo it and try and get my hair all in one like side ponytail. And I made a bow out of like paper that I'd colored.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great.
I was just like, because I remember driving up and down Sunset so much. I wanted to look like that. And so I was like, how do I accomplish this?
I love it. We need more of that. I mean, that's what we need right now when we're like in our houses. And people always say like dance like nobody's watching. It's
Right.
like we can just do it right now because nobody's watching. You
No
can
one's watching.
yeah, you can play dress up, you can create, I have like a little headband that I'm looking at right now that somebody made for me for a photo shoot, and then we ended up not using it, but it has like pink and yellow and blue baby clothes, baby diaper pins. I know
What?
it's like I know, very, very gendered, but they're so cute. It's like a little headdress with these baby pins, safety pins. And I thought somebody put a lot of creativity into making
Yeah.
this headdress. And I don't know, it's exciting to me. Anytime I see any little trace of that, whether it's like in clothing or in music, I think it's all the same vibe, like whether you're playing license plates or
Mhm.
making a paper bow or like sticking a suction cup on your
I love
on your
that.
forehead.
I love that
All
so
those things,
much.
they're all my people. You're my people. That's who I want to spend my life surrounded by. It's like
I like that it's like suction cup on forehead. Yeah, I got you.
yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. And I love that you just took it upon yourself to start writing. Like that to me, it's funny when I started this podcast, I wanted to talk to people who did multiple things. And also I've talked to other artists about like juggling parenthood along with artistry as well. And it sounds like you were like, yeah, bring it on. Um, what was that like becoming a parent within the music scene? Because I know like the male musicians I talk to, whenever I ask them about this, they're like shrug. um
ah!
yeah.
Yeah, well, my experience was not like that. I actually had a very difficult time. I didn't have a great support system. My husband was working full time. I
Mm,
was married, so I did have a support system, but he worked really long hours because I had to like take some time. I chose to take some time off.
right,
Um,
right.
but I had no little kid experience at all, and
Oh boy.
kids don't come with instruction. So
Nope.
I really felt overwhelmed at times,
Mhm.
and I stopped playing music, which felt like I was dying. It
Yeah.
really felt like I was not getting um, what I needed out of life. Like I was not getting stuff. It's not enough. Like I feel like I love my my daughter, and I love the time I spent with her, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But I also at the same time I need to play music. I need to write music.
Right.
I need to have something that nourishes me. I can't be there's not enough for me to give if I don't nourish
Yeah.
myself.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I really experienced that. I was actually I at a certain point I formed a band called Stay at Home Bomb, and
Oh my God, that's awesome.
and it was about experiencing that kind of feeling like I was going to go off. I was a bomb waiting to
Yeah.
happen because there was so much like pent up inside of me, so much creativity that couldn't get out, so much
Right.
like just I just needed to be around other musicians and have a chance, have an outlet. So I started rehearsing with them, and it's actually a really cool band, Stay at Home Bomb. We had like all the baby tropes, we had like our housewife tropes too. We had
Mhm.
a baby clothesline hanging behind us with
Oh
like
my God.
onesies and diapers,
Uh-huh.
uh and we wore aprons on stage, and my lead guitar player played guitar with she did a solo with a blender, I'm sorry, not a blender, a hand mixer. She would slide the hand mixer, play slide guitar. It was, and usually one of us would bake cookies and hand them out to the audience.
Oh my
So
God.
we really got into it. It was really fun.
Oh my God. I was just like, is there footage of this? This is amazing. I'm
There's
like,
probably
that's
footage
genius.
online. I'm
Oh
sure
my
there
God.
is some footage online.
I'm gonna Google the heck out of that. I'm like, that is brilliant. Cause yeah, I was thinking about, I'm so glad that you stated that it's like, it's not that, like, I think that people misunderstand when it's like, it's not that you didn't want to spend that time with your daughter, but it's like you need your time to be you. It's like you need to fill your cup so you can nurture her. Like,
Exactly.
otherwise you're like, my cup is empty.
Yeah, I have nothing to give. Like, I can't,
Yeah.
it's as important as eating,
Yeah.
if you're a musician, it's like eating or sleeping.
Yeah.
It's like you need this to stay sane.
Yeah.
Otherwise, as much as you want to be a good parent, you get edgy, you get like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what's wrong, you get emotional, you want to cry. A
Yeah.
baby wants to cry, and then
Everyone's crying. Everyone.
Seriously, I don't know how people do it that don't have a support system at all. Like, even though my husband was working long hours, he was there at night. I remember one time waking up to like breastfeed, and actually, I was up. I wasn't breastfeeding. I was pumping, and I pumped in the middle of the night, and at the time you had to like sterilize the suction cups and the
Yeah.
tubes that came
Yeah.
with that, and I set them to boil, and I fell asleep at the kitchen table waiting for them to boil. And I
Oh.
woke up with the plastic was melting, and the whole
Oh.
room was filled with these toxic fumes.
Oh
I was
my
like,
God.
oh, yes, it was insane. It was really scary because I could have set the house on fire, but it was just, you're so
Oh.
tired.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. Well, I'm glad that you survived. I was just like, that would be the most like mortifying cause of death. Be like, yeah, I melted my breast milk pump and oh my God, that's bonkers.
Yeah, I think it helps too if you're close to your family, and I'm not. I've become more close to my family over the years, but I've
Mhm.
also, there was a time when I was sort of distant from them, so
Mm.
they didn't. I didn't have that automatically, like somebody coming over and
Yes,
saying, "Hey, I'll watch the baby while you take a shower."
yes,
So it's
yes,
like,
yes. Did your friends understand that? Like, were they able to step up and help, or was it like a novelty that you had a baby, or?
I think a lot of my friends just kind of like, would invite me to go to a concert. And then when I couldn't go, they're like, oh, she's busy with her kid.
Oh
She
my
doesn't like us
God.
anymore. So I really felt like I didn't have a lot of friends who could relate.
Got it.
So it didn't work for me. So I didn't have this one.
Oh. It sounds like you were born and raised in LA and then like weren't really close with your family, which I'm guessing that was covered in your books. I'm just like, now I need to read your books. But then you raised your daughter in LA and I was like, oh, that's a different experience because then you were relying on your friends who like didn't seem like they understood that at all. But that must have been really interesting to like, did you raise her in the same place that you grew up or in a different area in LA?
Well, I had moved away from my parents' house. I was living in Glassell Park,
Mm-hmm.
and my father had passed away by then, and my mother passed away shortly after that. And my sister had also my sister was around until my daughter was about 2 or 3 years old, and she got cancer and also passed away.
Oh my goodness.
And then my older sister moved away, so I feel like it was mostly like people just, it wasn't that I had a falling out with my family. It's just that we weren't close. My older brothers are considerably older than me, and
Oh.
they had their own families and had moved to different areas, so we didn't see each other regularly.
Oh.
That's, yeah. So none of that is in my book. None of that is explained in my book. But I thought, but since it came up, I thought I would mention it, that it's not.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the whole thing. I mean, I don't hold it against my friends. That they didn't really understand where I was coming from, because I was that person. I had been the same type of person that would be like, "Oh, so and so just wants to stay home. Come on, get a babysitter. Come out. Like come and hang out with us. Don't forget your friends." And you kind of almost guilt the person. Like,
Yeah.
what, they don't want to come out. But it's like, it's a lot harder to find a sitter that you trust. And when
Yes.
you do find someone you trust, you have to make sure they're available.
Of
And then it can be really expensive if you're
Yes,
constantly hiring sitters. So
exactly.
for many reasons, it's not that people don't want to go out and have fun. It's that it becomes very difficult.
It can be prohibitive. Like the way
Yeah.
that my friend explained it, it was funny. Like one of the first times she went out without her kid, she messaged me and said, "I feel like a free Julian Assange." I was like, "Where are you?" She's like, "The Grove. I've broken out. Come meet me." Like,
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just having adult time,
yes.
having somebody else that you can just chat with without having to. I mean, and it sounds, it's sounding like I don't enjoy the time with my kid, but I really do. And and I had been a teacher for a long, long time, and I really loved it. That
Yeah.
was the reason I really wanted to have a kid, because I thought,
Oh.
I'm a good teacher. I'm going to be a great parent. But then I didn't realize, like, when you're a teacher, you get a lot of breaks. You get,
Yeah. Yeah, I was
it's
just like, I was like, parent 24/7.
24/7 for 20 years.
Surprise.
At least, right? My daughter's still, like, she lives she lives in my converted garage. So
Hmm.
she's still here. My
Oh.
baby's still at home.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think if my mom had her way, I'd still be at their house. I found it interesting talking to my parents even about how they grew up in LA versus what my experience was growing up in LA. And I was just like, I wonder if you and your daughter had ever had those conversations. Like my parents have like talked about like what's changed, what stayed the same, like all sorts of stuff. It's really interesting.
I don't know that I've ever really had that conversation with Sophia. I think part of it is because we were living in Arizona for part of it.
Hmm.
So it was new to both of us, that
Hmm.
experience. And then we moved to San Diego for a while, and that was new to both of us.
Hmm.
Occasionally, I guess I would, I'll point out something, but not that often. Maybe I should.
It's been really cool watching the documentary. It was interesting watching how they edited the audience reactions to you versus the audience reactions to other people in the documentary.
I think it was kind of weird, actually. I feel like different audience shots are mixed in,
Yes.
out of order. Like, I don't know that that is necessarily, um, like, I feel like somebody was just shooting the audience for the whole time, and then they just
Yes.
chose to put it in, for a certain band or another band. Like, because it is a strange thing. I'm not a huge fan of the decline of Western civilization.
Hmm.
Um, I am grateful to have been in it. I think Penelope Spheres did a wonderful job getting um, her vision across, and I admire that she is, you know, uh, she's a woman that had a vision and got it done, which is more than
Hmm.
a lot of people can do in Hollywood.
Yes.
And so so I admire that, but I also feel like for people who are just looking for a history of what punk was like, it doesn't tell the story of a whole bunch of very creative people that were around when punk first started. So if you're looking for that, that is not the documentary for it. This documentary really tells of a story of something much darker, which is not it's not really the way I remember punk. there were moments of anger and darkness and drug abuse, but it wasn't all like that, and it wasn't
Right.
always like that.
And I'm wondering, I was like, what else would you recommend people watch or read or listen to get a fuller picture? Because I like watching it, I did feel like it was certainly like one narrative through line of punk, but hearing what you're saying about, that it didn't quite capture kind of like how you saw it, I'm like, what media would you recommend people take in?
I don't know if people can look up stuff on YouTube. Maybe I have a series of interviews with women who were involved in the early punk scene on my website, and people can get recommendations of other bands that are not featured in that documentary, so they can look them up and see if there's footage of them. The sad thing about being at the forefront of a creative movement is that often you're not documented, and it's you're at the very beginning of the swell, and once it reaches the top, those people get all the attention, and the people who are at the very beginning are sometimes not the people who are remembered as the as part of the creators. So I feel like there's a whole bunch of bands. People have to do their research, and I think the easiest way is to either find footage online or look for old records, and also read interviews and writing from a variety of authors.
I like what you said about like actually doing your research, because I remember prior to this as a teenager, I remember listening to X, and one, I was just so excited that there was a female lead singer. Because I didn't relate as much to like yelling white men, I guess is the best way to put it, where it's like that kind of, it felt too scary to me. Like it was not as, it wasn't an anger that I could access necessarily. And
yeah, so, I mean, it's important that people realize too that there is a history of erasure of the contributions of women and people of color and queers. So
yes,
and in order to tell the full story, you need to get those voices in there. Then you'll be able to have a better idea of what punk was really like at the beginning, because it was, it was inclusive. Because they were the most creative, not the most, I mean, equally creative. I don't want to there are lots of white dudes that are super cool, super creative, but they are not the only ones, and they often get all the attention. So I just want to say, look elsewhere, broaden your horizons, do some research. You're going to find people of color there. You're going to find a lot of women, and you're going to find a lot of queers.
Yes. And that's what I found, like as a teenager, getting deep into, for some reason my parents thought it was okay to give me an AOL screen name when I was 12. And in some ways that super was okay, because really all I did was join chat rooms about music. I discovered a lot more about music, basically. And the more I dug, the more I found exactly what you said about like that, oftentimes there is a lot of erasure going on, just because, like you said, like then, a few years into a movement, it's then those people that get more popular.
Also, you wonder why those people got most popular too, and who are the people that get more popular? Are the people that are mirroring the people in power, or the values, or the look, or the whatever it is that people in power value. That's what they're going to package to you.
Yes. So. And then, in a way, like seeing, I don't know, I was talking to another artist about this, about that if you don't see someone in the role that you potentially want to be, either you have to like shoehorn yourself into like the nearest role, or you just decide like maybe that's not actually possible for me.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I feel like it's important just to be present, to be seen. And so that's, I mean, I think a lot of, there's a lot of women out there that are doing really creative stuff right now, and I really try to highlight it whenever I can. I go out of my way to, and not because of political reasons, but because I really enjoy the sound of a woman's voice.
Yes.
I really can relate to the things that many women have to say. Not just women either. I mean, just people that are stepping outside of the mainstream and have something original to say, something different that I haven't heard a million times.
Exactly.
So we all have to do our homework constantly.
And I love that phrase. I was just like, I love doing homework.
That's the teacher. That's the teacher in me coming out. I'm assigning homework.
Go find artists that were erased that actually speak to you. I was like, that's a great statement.
Yes, that's it.
I'm like, after I interview you, I'm like, I'm gonna totally go on like a Google spree.
Really? Thank you.
I was like, that's
Thank
exciting.
you.
I was like, because I want to go on your website and look at when you said that you interviewed different artists. I was just like, oh, that's so exciting.
Oh, not just artists though. I interviewed women who were involved in the early LA punk scene in different capacities, because I felt like it's not just like, this band had a lead singer who was a girl. It was like, no, we were in all the roles. I mean, there were people who were photographers. There were people that were making zines. They were bookers that were women. There were played every instrument, managed bands, pretty much did everything that the guys did. So those are the women that I interviewed because their stories weren't being told. I was like going to libraries and I pick up a book on punk and it was always like dudes in leather jackets or, looking a certain way, and mostly white dudes. And I just thought, this is not the punk I remember.
Well, and that's so interesting that you say that, because I noticed, it's interesting because now I want to look up more footage of you, because I noticed also in the edit, other than the audience reaction, which I thought was like, I was like, that seems like a really specific choice to have that audience reaction to you, but also that there were shots of your feet and that you were wearing like kitten heels.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, one, like, you're more coordinated than I. Like, me trying to jump around in heels I'm like, I can stand still and or walk slowly. And so I was like, mad respect to your levels of coordination. But I also thought that was an interesting choice and spoke to me about the fact that I'm like, I'm sure that there were other artists who were wearing something other than the the uniform of like a sweaty t-shirt and a leather jacket and like that whole thing. I was just like, I'm sure that there are more people wearing like you were wearing. Like,
yes, there were. And there were, at the beginning, it was all really open. A lot of us would like paint our clothes and not only go thrift store shopping and like alter your clothes, but like there, I remember going to Fredericks of Hollywood, buying stiletto heels to wear on stage. And and it was crazy. It was, it was kind of impossible, but we did it anyway because we were young and we thought like, let's see if this works.
Right.
Which is,
and
let's see if I can manage not to fall. And if I fall, it's part of the show.
And that's amazing. That's kind of like the suction cupped crystal to your forehead.
Exactly. Well, I mean, because part of the fun of going to see a live show is having that edge, having that feeling like, what will happen? What's going to be unexpected? Who wants to? I mean, I personally don't want to see something that is rehearsed to perfection. If I'm not that interested unless it's like synchronized swimming or something. I want to see, somebody who's pushing it on stage, and like who is totally in the moment and perhaps doesn't do the thing that was rehearsed and does something else instead. So that's what you got with the bags. You often got like out of control, falling down. Like I have scars from like falling down. Like I remember falling on broken glass in
Oh my
the
God.
audience, and like having a bloody knee, just like running around, and being like really sick with a cough, and swigging Vicks Formula 44 was the cough syrup of choice. And I would just like stand up there swigging a bottle of Vicks Formula 44, making myself so sick and throwing up behind an amp.
Oh
So
God.
these are the kind of like ridiculous shows we used to put on.
Well, I think what you said speaks to kind of like the vulnerability of performance, that, you know, in some ways, like, we want to rehearse everything so that we don't, quote, like, mess up in front of people. But if anything, that like messing up and that being human and that almost like inherent messiness is what's interesting about live performance.
Yeah, I agree.
And like, it's so funny because I get really bad stage fright. I'm a total studio rat. Like, put me in a pile of keyboards and I'm really happy. And so I'm like, I need to embrace my inner rolling around in broken glass a tiny bit. Maybe rolling around in glitter. That technically counts as broken glass, right?
That can be dangerous too, though.
You'll have glitter on you forever.
Wow, like get in your eyes.
Yes,
I know this is a teacher in me again. Oh, stop, Alice.
Oh, it's so funny. You're like, just wear goggles.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be an interesting performance art piece, like rolling around in glitter wearing goggles.
Yes.
Oh my God.
But you've got to roll around in butter first to get the, and then glitter to get a good coating.
Oh my God. That sounds way better than baking. I don't know. It's like day 17 of quarantine, bust out the butter.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny. How do you capture the energy of that when you're doing like studio recordings and such?
I think when I go into the studio, like, I kind of put on my producer cap while the instruments are being laid down.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I go to sing, I just kind of block everything out. I close my eyes and I just try and live the song, live the lyrics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I find that, I don't know about for you, but for me, sometimes that's the hardest if it's like I'm doing multiple vocal takes, like to stay engaged in the story of it when there's like no external, like there's no audience. You're just like, well, I'm going to tell this story again.
No, I actually, I really like it. I really like going into like living the story.
Ooh.
And I'm really fortunate because I feel like my producer is great at getting me out of my head and helping me imagine other ways of telling the story.
Ooh.
So she'll often tell me, okay, try that. Try that, but now you're like more vulnerable, or now you're like angry. Give me an angry version. So she'll have me do it different ways. I think the thing that I notice most is that I take more chances in the studio.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like a lot, like, because I feel like, if we don't like it, we just don't use it. But
right.
I'm gonna go for that note that I've never sung before. I'm gonna try and hit that high note and sustain it. And if I don't sustain it, we're just gonna cut it out.
Yep.
So I feel like I can do anything. I feel like the studio is actually a really liberating experience for me musically.
That's so cool.
On like it's completely different high from like being in front of an audience. When I'm in front of an audience, it's less about the music and more about the interaction, the human connection, the feeling of each other's energy. But in the studio, it's all about like, how can I get the message of this song into my voice?
That's fascinating. And what you
Yeah.
said, it made me reflect on my own experience. And I think what you said is accurate of like how your producer encourages you to sing things with different, different emotional inflections and things like that. That's actually what helped me get out of the mind frame of like, ugh, I have to tell the story again, was working with a vocal engineer that I had produced out the rest of the song. And then I was recording the vocals at her place. And she was telling me to think of different things while I was singing, so that I would have different emotional inflections. It was really interesting. Like one of them, she's just like, you got cotton candy on Santa Monica Pier and then it started raining. Like stuff like that. We're
Oh, I can imagine that. That's good.
Right. And it was
Yeah.
so cool. And it's like, I think what you said, like it's a different kind of interaction. Like in that way you're interacting with like your team that you trust, and also you're bringing out different aspects of the songs, as opposed to, I love that you said that almost when you're performing live, like it is that you're communicating through the music, but it's about your interaction. So the focus is totally different.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yes. And you know that in the live situation, people are not going to hear every inflection. And in the studio, they are. You can
Yes.
whisper something, or you can just bend the note in a little bit, and people are going to hear it. And
Yes.
it's going to touch someone in a different way. But on stage, it's all about what you're doing, how you're behaving, and what the animal energy is that you're
Exactly.
exchanging. Yeah.
I'm puzzling through, and I guess it's still like a question for all of us of like how to interact with live streaming right now where we can't be around other people.
Yeah, I find it kind of difficult. I enjoy watching other people put up like acoustic songs, like you put up a clip of themselves doing something that they might not usually do.
Yeah.
I enjoy that, but I also feel like that's not like, I've been invited to several like concerts, like to do a concert where I'm playing my guitar and just singing, and I thought like that's not what I feel like doing right now. I don't like
Yeah.
um there's a lot of people doing it and they're really strong at it. I would rather just do a bad exercise video and and invite people to do it with me. I seriously, I'm so into um, doing exercise videos with there's this YouTube
Uh-huh.
personality called the Fitness Marshal,
Oh my
and
God.
my daughter and I watch them. They do one song, and then but they have a whole bunch of songs that you can choose from, and you can add on. You can choose to get up and do one song, or you can do 10 songs if you're
Whoa.
feeling ambitious. And it's really fun. And they really stress that it's not about like doing it perfectly. It's about having fun and getting up and shaking your ass, right?
Moving.
Like, yeah. He calls his followers the booty army.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I recommend Fitness Marshall if you're at
Fitness
home and you're
Marshall.
feeling like. But and of course I also have my own uh like little fitness clips that I've been putting up to punk songs.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, it's on
That's
YouTube. Check
amazing.
it out. Check it out.
Yes. Yes. Because I think that people, I think that what you just said sparked in my mind. Like that was one of the things I was missing when I was watching this live stream, was like
The
the
interaction.
yeah, the interaction and the moving around part. Because when you
Yes.
have a show, like I feel like people make fun of others in LA, and it's somewhat accurate that like people sometimes stand like completely still at a show, which baffles me. Like when I'm in an audience and when I'm performing, like watching people stand like statues, I'm like, what you doing? I mean, like you don't have to like be going wild, but like if like you always kind of you're feeling the music, like it moves
Yeah.
the body and other bodies are moving around you. And so I was like, that's brilliant that you're setting like exercise to punk rock, because I'm like, how could you listen to punk rock and not move?
Right. It makes you want to move. It makes you
Yes.
want to be happy and dance around and be goofy. At least that's how it makes me feel. So I want people to have that option, to like I think we spend, at least I did at the very beginning of this like quarantine, feel like, okay, it's like I'm sick. I'm going to watch TV and watch the news, see who's infected, like who's like how many people have died, what's up with the respirators, and you just become like it's almost like makes you feel like you're sick, and I'm not sick. I'm healthy. I want to get up and I want to move. I can't go to the gym. I can't really, I can't go to a concert and dance around, so I'm going to dance in my living room and make some goofy moves.
I love that.
Make sure you take some time to do the Alice bag workout.
Heck yeah. Thank you so much for spending all this time talking to me. This has been amazing. I'm like, this is...
Oh, it's my pleasure. It was really fun.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Why Not Both? If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. You can also come hang out with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, both on Instagram and Twitter. This season, we are brought to you by Under the Radar. Under the Radar is a nationally distributed print, music, and entertainment magazine and website. You can find them at www.undertheradarmag.com and feel free to support them on Patreon. Extra special thanks to our producer, Laura Studeris, who has been absolutely amazing. Thank you again, and I look forward to next week's episode.